the funding ratio. I believe that these systems that are already funded, even if they change their assumptions, they will remain above 100% funded, but at some point the amortization will limit how far above the funding ratio they can get. The next step would be, we don't have the capability to project in the future, given the data we have, is to see what happens in that scenario. Do these systems that are already well funded, do they just keep getting more funded under the BRP recommendations, or do they reach a steady state?
I didn't understand how, if you have a system that's over 100% funded, what are they amortizing? And why would that grow?
You amortize both gains and losses.
Okay.
So if you say you're above 100% funded, and you have a gain, you're going to be having gains each year. Then those are amortized, so those actually come off your payments.
I mean, the question is what the client wants here. I mean, I think
what they want the client to learn is the
well,
question.
What the client learned.
The client wants to see that. They want us to show that the BRP recommendations would have worked or would have created a better outcome, but that's not necessarily the right question. It's like, will they always create a better outcome, or would they only have created a better outcome under this scenario that happened?
Right. So a lot of it does have to do, in fact, with the assumptions. And our stochastic returns are very emblematic of this, since we did use a normally distributed data set centering around CalPERS like high returns. So in that very rosy state of the world, some of the plans just under their assumptions that they have right now, they'd be okay.
So how does it? I'm wondering how the BRP recommendations are sort of, how do you account for your liabilities and how do you do things, as opposed to, does this wake up the California legislator in 1999 and say, don't do this idiotic thing you did? I mean, because otherwise, does changing the accounting change what would have happened? I mean, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So this is Stockton miscellaneous. It's very similar to. So it'd be. Let's just take this as a proxy for all of CalPERS at the moment, for argument's sake. And we're looking at the black line here. We have 4.5. All right. So the legislators at this point in time are looking at this black line and saying, well, in 1999 we are 140% funded. Maybe we're paying too much in normal cost. So one, we could pay less. We could pay more benefits. It's a lot better for politicians to pay more benefits because they look better. So that's what they did. They assumed, looking at this, that and the way they were calculating their liabilities, and they said, maybe we are permanently. They look at this trend of overfunded. We have the calculation wrong. But under the calculations that the BRP suggests, which uses a treasury rate, or really they suggest the treasury yield curve, which we can't use because we don't have the expected cash flows. We guess we're underfunded, but we're not as overfunded for as long of a period of time. And I believe for CalPERS you never quite get over 100%. So in that case, the legislators never would have had the opportunity to say, you know what, we can stop funding for 2 years and pay more benefits.
And the UC system.
Oh yeah, then
didn't make a payment
for 20.
I think it was 18 years. They did not make a contribution to their retirement system, and it was basically because they looked at us and they said we're X% overfunded. Everything's fine. They'd use these different assumptions. Very different conclusion. A different story. Yeah. Right.
So you've convinced me. I think you've convinced Bill Shrub. You've convinced Joe that this is a worthwhile thing. What actually do you think are the challenges of convincing decision makers, right, that they ought to be implementing these?
The challenges are lowering the discount rate means increasing the normal cost as well, which is payments every year, which is something that, this is why we're upset in the first place now, is because our costs so high, and this would increase them even more. The argument against that is, if we had been paying the amount we needed on these accrued benefits every year, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. So we can either change the assumptions and at least pay down what we're accruing every year from now forward, and then deal with the unfunded liability separately, or we can just keep accruing more unfunded liability.
And when accruing the unfunded liability, you end up with a situation like Stockton has, where now it's going bankrupt. And few politicians, I think, want to be the ones that get to say, "Oh, I was the one that led Stockton to bankruptcy."
Anything else? Other questions? Yeah.
So has any part of your dialogue with your client been focused on like a structural change into the pension system, or like shifting from this sort of like a state-led pension system into a more individual one, like the one that is you can see right now in the U.S. in private corporations, in which every individual contributes to his own account and then retires on his own savings?
So on a national level, Nebraska was kind of the first mover. They moved to defined contribution in the 60s, but they're pretty much the anomaly. The way they're dealing with it now is, since pension benefits are protected by various portions of the law in most states, either by contract law or actually by the Constitution, they have a very hard time now saying, okay, well, we paid you too much in benefits, we're going to take those away now. Although recently in the Stockton case, court has ruled that they are subject to renegotiation just as much as any other debt, so that at least puts it on the table. So the way that it's mostly being dealt with is new hires who don't have existing contracts are either being put on defined contribution or being offered lower benefits. But that's a slow process because you still got 30 years of workers that are going to get to retirement and then have another however many years of retirement.
Anything else? Thank you.